Well, they meet again. One of the most anticipated matchups of the 2022 NFL season will take place in Week 4 on Sunday Night Football. Mahomes and Brady, the Chiefs and Bucks, a rematch of Super Bowl 55. The old man, he smoked the rising superstar that game. Tampa Bay currently a 2.5-point favorite on the DK Sportsbook. We're going to have a full schedule release show tomorrow morning right here on The Sweat. All our award-winning analysts breaking down the biggest games. We got some special guests as well. I can't name them all because we don't know if some of them will actually show up. I'll be there, and I'm here right now. I'm Emerson Lotzi. Thanks for watching The Sweat presented by DraftKings. I am not alone, though. We got a three-headed monster here to talk some NBA because last night got a little weird, got a little wild. Let's go. DraftKings contributors Maddie Meiselman. We got RotoWire's Nick Whalen and Four Seasons podcast host Ryan Mogjosh. All here for a little NBA shoot-around. So, Maddie, I'll start with you. Memphis stays alive, kicks the crap out of Golden State. The trend of playing fantastic basketball without Ja Morant, that continues. How do you feel about capitalizing right now and maybe a little value as the Warriors drop to plus 250 to win the finals or plus 115 to win the West?
Yeah, I don't think this is value at all. Like, I really think that this line is still totally just detached from where it should be. And it has a lot to do with the Warriors' opponents, why I think this. So basically, the Warriors were a distant second behind the Suns in terms of betting odds for most of the season. And the only thing that's changed since then is that Devin Booker got injured and then came back. So it's a wash at this point. But the Warriors looking good has been more about playing the Denver Nuggets, who are not a great team, and then playing the Grizzlies, who, despite having a banged-up Desmond Bane and now not having Ja Morant, and also playing a few games without Steven Adams, they've still had to, basically be life and death in most of these games. And anyone who's watched these games, I think, with the exception of last night, can tell that this is more about the Warriors struggling than the Grizzlies playing well. We've seen open shots that have been missed. We've just seen the Warriors play bad defense. So I don't think anything's happened to show that the Warriors are a better team than the Suns. Actually, when I think when all of us went to sleep last night, the Warriors were favored over the Suns. They were minus 105 to win the Western Conference. That line has started to move, and we're seeing the Suns at minus 115. If this is the conference finals matchup, I think we see the Suns get above minus 150, maybe even up to minus 200. And I kind of think this market is just broken right now. So the long answer is no, I don't really want it. I have no interest in the Warriors right now.
All right, Nick, Morant's unlikely to play the rest of the season, or the rest of the series, rather. Could be the season as well. Grizzlies 21-6 without him now this year. What do you think about Memphis here making a 3-1 comeback? We've seen Golden State obviously lose a 3-1 lead before in the finals 2016 against LeBron and the Cavs. You can get plus 700 Memphis to win this series right now in the DK Sportsbook.
Yeah, plus 700 for Memphis. I mean, Golden State minus 1,100, which still says a lot about the confidence level that the bookmakers have in the Warriors. I thought Golden State was going to win this game handily last night, so I was completely wrong about that. I mean, the door is wide open after a game where you go down by 55 points at one point late in the third quarter. I mean, obviously that game got away from Golden State early, but the way that Memphis continued to pour it on, even with the bench players, I think was a little bit alarming if you're Golden State. Chances are I think the Warriors do win one out of the next two games here. I would be very surprised if they end up blowing this series. That would be really an all-time shock. But I like a lot of what Matt said. It does feel like the betting markets, especially the futures markets, shifted once Devin Booker went down and once that Suns-Pelican series became a little bit more competitive than people thought. And it never really went back to the levels that it should have gone back to, which was the Suns being major favorites in the Western Conference. They were the best team in the NBA by far for the entire regular season. The Warriors were neck and neck with the Suns for like the first third of the season, and were just an average to slightly above average team for most of the second half of the year. And that's kind of the team that they've looked like in the playoffs as well. So I think Golden State finishes off Memphis, but I'd be betting the Suns to make it to the finals. I don't love the odds on Golden State.
All right, Ryan, I mean, Memphis received contributions from up and down its roster. 7 players finished the win, having scored in double figures. But is this all part of Golden State's master plan, wanting to close out the series at home?
I don't know if that is necessarily part of the plan. I think that they want and need rest when they can get it, which would be winning last night. But I've seen a trend to where in these playoffs, your leaders, your best players on the team, your whole team follows that leader. So like this last game that the Sixers played, Embiid didn't really show up. Harden, I would not say is a leader on that team by any means, especially when it comes to impact on winning. But if Embiid doesn't show up, then why would anybody else show up? Same thing with this Warriors last night. Okay, Steph, Draymond, they're not really showing up. They're making mental mistakes. They're turning the ball over. They're not shooting well. Clay, he didn't show up. So why would anybody else show up? So that's why you saw Memphis go up to a 55-point lead. It didn't look like the Warriors were motivated. Some of those veteran teams kind of are able to turn on the switch. We've seen LeBron do that his whole career. I think Steph, Clay, Draymond have rings, knows what it takes, aren't freaking out about this loss, and are kind of, in a way, playoff coasting to where, yeah, okay, they now realize this game goes back to San Francisco. Now it's time to turn it on. Now it's time to win Game 6.
Yeah, I mean, the Grizzlies have been the better team on the court for a majority of this series, too. That includes 2 games without Ja. Like, if he makes that layup at the end of Game 1 and then, like, Brooks doesn't play like crap in Game 4, I mean, they closed that series out last night. It's kind of crazy when you think big picture about it. But then over in the East here, Nick, Milwaukee's 14-point comeback win over Boston in Game 5. That was defined by 10 seconds of Drew Holiday's defensive heroics. It was absolutely impressive. How did the Celtics come back from this, man? I mean, their heart was just pulled out of their chest.
You're a Celtics guy, right? You tell me. I mean, I don't know. It kind of felt the same way when the Bucks dropped, the previous game, Game 4. I don't think it was quite as heartbreaking, but it felt like they controlled it. They were up, I think, double digits at the end of the third quarter, and you're starting to look ahead, and all of a sudden, what you think is a win turns into a loss, and it's really hard to come back from that. And I was worried about how Milwaukee would react in this game, and they battled back. They got the win. All of a sudden, they're back in control of the series. So it's easy, I think, to think that the momentum is just going to keep carrying on, but that really hasn't been the case in this series at all. I don't think Boston is going to come to Milwaukee and just roll over tomorrow night. I would not be surprised whatsoever if we're headed back to Boston for Game 7, which I believe would be on Sunday. But yeah, heck of a game. I mean, I had a serious amount of backtracking to do on Twitter because I just could not resist trashing Drew Holiday's shot selection the entire game. And nothing really changed there. He continued to take and miss terrible shots down the stretch. But, man, those were 2 back-to-back insane defensive plays on Marcus Smart to end that game by Drew Holiday. So I guess you'll live with the 5 of 22 in Game 4, 9 of 24 last night. If he's coming up with plays like that.
Yeah, Ryan, we've seen the Celtics win a game in Milwaukee already, so we know they can do it.
Yeah, I don't know. Drew also hit a big top-of-the-key 3 late in that game, too. Historically hasn't shot great, but, yeah, the last 15 seconds of Drew was unreal. And for a guy that doesn't have a horse in the race, I'm excited to hear what Matt says about this. But the one thing that came to mind was championship DNA. The Bucks handled adversity, so much adversity in that game. They withstood the runs, and they won it all last year, and that taught a lot of those players a lot about themselves, a lot about what it takes to win these types of games. I don't think a team that doesn't have a championship in the past or doesn't have movement in those big games to react the way they reacted. So hats off to the Bucks. That was unreal.
Matty, this is your team, dude. C's got sloppy and complacent there, man.
Yeah, I said a lot about Suns Warriors. Can I just sit here and cry for 30 seconds?
Yeah, go ahead. That's good TV.
Oh, man. It was just really frustrating to watch the end of that. But I think both of these teams are more than capable of winning the championship this year. And I wasn't as optimistic about this series as maybe some other people, in large part because I don't think Chris Middleton matters as much as it's been made out to be. Because Giannis is a top 3 player in the NBA. And I think Drew Holiday is clearly the number 2 on this team. Without Middleton, those two have to do more, but they're certainly capable of it. So the Bucks are still a great team without Middleton. The Celtics are a great team. And the Celtics did come back from massive deficits in both Game 3 and Game 4. They didn't end up winning Game 3, but they were down double digits in the fourth quarter in both of those. So I think both of these teams have proven they're capable of bouncing back from just about anything. I mean, the Celtics bounced back from essentially being out of the playoffs at the midpoint in the year. So the Bucks, of course, have the edge right now. I think they deserve to be the favorites in the Eastern Conference, obviously deserve to be the favorites in this series with the 3-2 lead. But it's not over. It's basically going to be a coin flip Game 6, and if the Celtics are lucky enough to win that, then they'll have the edge in Game 7.
All right, so Bucks minus 240 to win the series. Boston Celtics can get plus 200 odds on them right now on the DK Sportsbook to win this thing in 7 games. Let's go to tonight, though, here, guys. We saw a lot of role players really get involved last night in those 2 games. We know the stars are going to ball out tonight. Like, Luka's going to need to play well for the Mavs to stay in it. I mean, same for Harden and Embiid. Like, Harden's just disappeared minus, like, 1 game, really. So we should expect some fantasy points from the top-priced guys, yes. Who's the value play, though, in DFS tonight, Matty?
There aren't many. Like, pricing has been really efficient for this whole round, basically. Like, the people that are the popular plays in the low to mid price range are guys that, like, on a normal slate, no one would have played. Like, $6,000 or whatever for Jalen Brunson. On a slate in the regular season, like, that wouldn't be that exciting. Now it's just so thin that, like, people are gravitating there. So there is one situation I'm keeping an eye on, and that's the Sixers, where Matisse Thybulle is questionable. And I think Paul Reed could actually wind up getting extra run in this game. So if the game gets weird, like Embiid gets re-injured or there's a blowout or foul trouble or anything like that, Reed picks up the minutes in that scenario. But we also saw a brief stint where Reed played alongside Joel Embiid last game. And then if Thybulle's out, we also have George Niang just looking terrible in this series. I think it makes sense for Doc Rivers to go to a little more of Paul Reed with Thybulle playing hurt, Niang playing hurt. Reed at the 4 next to Embiid will help on the defensive end. So I could see Paul Reed playing 20-plus minutes, even in a close game with Embiid on the floor. It's a bit of a reach, like, I'll admit that, because there just isn't much in terms of value right now. But I think that Paul Reed has a good amount of upside for this game.
Okay, Nick, which role player is going to make the difference tonight?
Yeah, I feel the same way about the pricing that Matt mentioned. So good job, Emerson, setting all the prices for the slate tonight. I think everything is pretty much spot on. But there's a group of guys kind of in the mid 4,000s that I'm keeping an eye on. And that's like Spencer Dinwiddie's at 4,600, Cam Johnson at 4,500, Gabe Vincent at 4,400. All those guys have been very much up and down in this series. I mean, Gabe Vincent has basically been a non-factor when Kyle Lowry is playing, but Kyle Lowry's not playing in this game. He should start again at point guard. So I'm pretty comfortable rolling with Gabe Vincent at 4,400. Cam Johnson, 4,500, a guy that's pretty much 3-point reliant, but Jay Crowder might be a little banged up in this game, maybe some more minutes funnel to Cam Johnson. And then Spencer Dinwiddie, feast or famine, right? I mean, you're either going to get like 30 DraftKings points or like 7 DraftKings points. So you kind of have to live with that possibility. But if that's your style, I think he's someone to consider.
Okay, Ryan, hook me up here, man.
So as far as sportsbook goes, I wouldn't consider this guy a value play, but Tyrese Maxey is a guy that at home Philly loves. He's 6,400 tonight, so again, mid-tier. But who knows if Harden's going to care about winning. So Maxey is the guy. I think I would even go as far as to say he might be the second option for Philly tonight in a pivotal game to keep them alive. But after the 2 losses that Phoenix suffered in Dallas, they came out and said, hey, we're going to make some adjustments. So Shamet got 19 minutes last game, and he's 3,500. And also Biyombo is getting minutes instead of McGee. McGee played only 3. So Biyombo's 3,200, and he played 21 minutes last game. So those 2, if you're looking for some actual value, are good.
All right, Ryan, need you guys quick on this last one. 2-point favorites, the 76ers are tonight. And then you got the Suns as 2-point favorites as well. Who's going to win tonight, dude?
If I had to pick one that has a good chance of forcing a Game 7, I would say it's Dallas because they've been so dominant at home. But 2 bets to keep an eye on really quick. Philly is -1 in the first quarter at home. Backs against the wall. I think they come out hot. And then also the same thing. Dallas is plus 0.5 in the first quarter at home. Backs against the wall. I think both those teams cover that.
Nick, which team's most likely to force a Game 7?
I like those first quarter bets, but I think the 2 teams that are up 3-2 win both of these games tonight. I like Miami on the road. I like Phoenix even a little bit more on the road. The one I'm more confident in would be the Suns.
All right, which one you betting tonight, Matty?
Yeah, I'm laying the 2 points with Philly. I lean towards Dallas. I think that's closer to a toss-up. But the encouraging thing with Embiid is that even though he looked terrible in the first half, we saw a brief stretch in the third quarter where he started like actually moving well and scored on like 4 straight possessions. So the key is just, is Embiid healthy? And I think if he is at least somewhat healthy, the Sixers are a better team than the Heat. So I feel pretty good about this. I think the Sixers do cover the -2. Obviously, that means they win also.
All right, guys, fantastic work. We got to talk some NHL because one of the faces of the league is a little banged up. The impact it could have on your DFS lineups moving forward when we come back. All right, so Sidney Crosby gets injured last night in Pittsburgh's game against the Rangers. So within 3 minutes of him leaving, take a look at your screen. The Penguins were up 2-0, right? Then the Rangers put the biscuit in the basket 3 times. Again, within 3 minutes of Sidney Crosby leaving. New York had no answer for the Crosby line until they injured Crosby. NHL.com's Fantasy on Ice host Pete Jensen is here. RotoWire's Paul Bruno is here. We're going to look at tonight's slate, but real quick, I mean, what chance are you giving Pittsburgh in this series, Paul, without Sidney Crosby?
I think very small chance. That's a key blow. This guy's been their team leader forever, but he's really elevated his game once again in the playoffs. We've seen it. We've all seen it. And we saw how quickly they were a different team without him. Their emotional leader, it's a blow to them. Maybe they reset and use it as motivation if he's not able to continue. But off what I saw, I didn't like it. And I'm sure AJ would say the same thing.
Yeah, how nervous are you right now if you are Pittsburgh, Pete?
I don't think they're that nervous, honestly, because they've dealt with major injuries. Remember the beginning of the year when they were missing Crosby and Malkin and Rust, I think, at the same time. It was like, it's crazy how this team is so resilient through the years. It doesn't matter. Remember the one playoff run, Letang was out for the entire playoffs and they had like a shell of a defense and they still won the cup. So in terms of winning one of the final 2 games, Pittsburgh's definitely capable of it. The problem is, you know, they're already masking the fact that they're on their 3rd string goalie. And now without Sidney Crosby, that's a lot to stomach. So, yeah, again, I think Pittsburgh still could advance. Their best player, Crosby, has been their best player in the series. The Rangers' best player, Shesterkin, has not. He's been far from their best player. He needs to be their best player in Game 6. He needs to do what his fellow countryman Ilya Sorokin did last year in Game 5, totally steal the game in Game 6, and give the Rangers back some confidence heading back home for Game 7.
I mean, Penguins fans were so ticked off on Twitter last night. They're talking about the only way Rangers can win games is by injuring players. Like Raquel was first, and then Crosby, and no calls on either one. Those fans were going back and forth all night on the socials. What about this evening? Who's your favorite winger or center tonight in DFS, Pete?
I'm going to go with the bounce back appeal of the Minnesota Wild, and I'm going to go with Ryan Hartman. This guy scored 34 goals, career high in the regular season, and is playing with Kirill Kaprizov, who's leading, or he's actually tied for the NHL lead this postseason with 7 goals. So, yeah, I like Hartman's chances of breaking through here in a must-win spot for the Wild. And this game, of all the series that have been topsy-turvy, right? Like one team blows out the other one on that team's home ice, and then the next game, the opposite happens. The other team gets blown out on their home ice. So, yeah, again, I think that Ryan Hartman and the Minnesota Wild, Kirill Kaprizov, like he played in Game 5, is not going to go down quietly, even if the Wild lose this game. So I like Hartman, one of the breakout players of the entire season, to finally score his first goal of the playoffs.
Paul, 4 Game 6s tonight. The Kings, your Maple Leafs, the Hurricanes, St. Louis, they can all end series tonight. Are you looking for a guy on one of these teams looking to close it out?
I'm looking at two guys, and I'm not going to look at the Leafs Lightning game. I don't like Leaf Pete to touch that one, but I look at Carolina and Boston. Sebastian Aho has feasted on the Bruins all season long. That goes back to 3 blowouts in the regular season and a couple more in the playoffs. Yet somehow he's still priced at only $6,100, Emerson. I don't get that. The Bruins are going to kiss this season goodbye tonight, I think. Low price tag for a C1 is something I can't overlook, and I'm on Aho tonight. And in another game, I look at St. Louis. I've been one of the guys that called this team to be a scary club 2 months ago, and they've been on a tear ever since. David Perron's been central to that. He's establishing a great rep as a playoff scorer over the last few years, dating back to when they won the Cup, in fact. And once again, he stepped up his pace this postseason with a current streak of 6 goals and 9 points on 37 shots in his last 10 games played, dating back to the late regular season. He'll line up as a right wing 2 next to Ryan O'Reilly, the team's heart and soul captain, and cost only $5,500 tonight. I think that's a bargain.
All right, Paul, which defenseman is a must roster here? Edmund, head and shoulders above the rest in the salary department. He's $7,100. Next closest guy is $5,500.
Yeah, I think Hedman's going to be in tough tonight against the Leafs. They've got a chance to pull the plug, so I'll leave that again. I look at Tony DeAngelo. A couple of days you asked me about the same teams in this game, and I said DeAngelo would have a big night. He had 3 points. In fact, he's had 8 points in 5 games in this series so far. The Bruins have not had an answer for him, and they really ticked him off with Brad Marchand's antics against him. I think that's been a real motivator for a guy who plays with a lot of emotion. He cost $5,500. It's a little more than I usually pay for a top D man, but I think he's going to be a difference maker tonight, and I'm going to put him in my lineup for sure. I think the St. Louis Blues, I said, I'd take advantage of home ice to eliminate Minnesota tonight, and central to their success of late is one Justin Falk, who averages almost 3 shots on goal per game, and he's got a howitzer of a shot. And he also has 3 goals and 9 points in this 10-game stretch, as well as 9 blocks. So he's doing that at both ends, and that accounts for a 12.0 DK points per game over his last 10 starts. He costs only $4,900 this evening.
Hey, Pete, I'm seeing Evan Bouchard there. $5,000 on DK here. Good cash play the other night, and that should improve, right? With Nurse suspended for Game 6.
That's a great storyline for sure. Bouchard was one of the top even strength point producers among defensemen in the regular season, top 15, and he'll take on an elevated role with the Kings, or with the Oilers facing elimination against the Kings. But I'm a little worried about Edmonton. I'm going to go with a safer play in Jacob Slavin. He's got 11 points in his past 13 playoff games. This is a guy that totally elevates his game come postseason time. In the regular season, he's a workhorse, but he's kind of overshadowed by a couple other guys. This year it's been DeAngelo. Past years it's been Dougie Hamilton. But yes, Slavin always brings his best in the playoffs. He's got great splits in his career come postseason time. He's probably going to play like 25 to 30 minutes if the Hurricanes are able to win in Boston, especially if that game goes into overtime. He's going to rack up shots. He's going to rack up blocks, and he's going to continue to score to help put Carolina over the top. Remember how Boston has owned the Hurricanes in recent years. They're going to have a chance to finish them off here tonight, finally.
All right, Pete, before you take off, hook me up with a value play. Save us some money here for our lineups.
I really like Ross Colton, what he's doing on the Tampa Bay Lightning third line. He's really cheap in DraftKings. He actually leads them in goals this postseason, if you could believe it. He's got 3. He's got more than Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, all those guys. And he's tied for 3rd on the Lightning in points this postseason, despite being 8th out of their 12 forwards in average ice time. So he's like packing the punch offensively. They're going to need those depth guys to come through if they hope to extend this series to 7. Remember, the Lightning, their bounce back appeal, they've been automatic the past 2+ postseasons. They haven't lost consecutive games. That's a really good trend for tonight. And I like that Colton is bringing the depth scoring right now for the Bolts.
Paul, who are you recommending for a value play tonight?
First, to build on that last comment, and what gives me pause for optimism with the Leafs game is that Lightning have not lost 2 playoff games in a row in their last 16 tries. That's a streak that's got to end sooner or later, and why not tonight, I say. I'm looking at 2 other games. Jordan Kyrou gets right wing assignment on the top line, riding his own hot streak with 5 goals, 11 points, and 26 shots on goal in his last 10 starts. Despite these numbers and his prominent role, he still only costs $4,700. I don't get that tonight for a first-line winger on a team that's ready to eliminate the opposition. And the LA Kings are a team that we haven't showed a lot of love. We keep waiting for the Edmonton Stars to beat them, but they got trounced, the Oilers did, at home. And it was a lopsided game. I think the Kings finally pulled a grass over Edmonton's season this year. And the second line has been a key role for the Kings in this series. I plug in 2/3 of that group tonight. Center Phil Deneau is getting a lot of credit for his strong two-way play, has 7 goals and 2 helpers in his last 10 starts, costing only $4,100. And I can't overlook his right winger either, Trevor Moore, compiling 4 goals and 4 helpers over his last 10 games played. You can throw in 14 blocks as well, and I still can't figure out why he's only $4,200 tonight.
All right, guys, good catching up with you. Thanks for all the hockey help. We got MLB Best Bets coming up. We're still talking NASCAR, plus an early look at some PGA Championship odds right after this break. Let's take a little trip around the diamond, shall we? How about some Major League Baseball best bets with DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan, Mr. Positive, Gary and Thorne, the underdog, Easy E, Eric Halterman of RotoWire. We got 4 games. 4 games starting at 1 o'clock Eastern time. I saw you there, Samir. I saw you on television. Please pay attention. All right, 4 games starting at 1 o'clock Eastern time. What's your favorite bet from the early action today, Steven?
Yeah, how about let's go with the Nationals. Go over 3.5 runs at -120. There's this guy taking the mound for the Mets. His name is Taijuan Walker. Not very good. Not very good at all. Here's something amazing. This is his 4th start of the season. His first time against a team that's not named the Phillies. That's pretty remarkable, right? So now he's going to be facing the Nationals, who just absolutely pulverized the Mets yesterday. That was quite the run fest that we had over there. But the Nationals averaging a respectable 4.2 runs over the last 5 games. They're not an offensive juggernaut, but that's what teams look like when they go and face Taijuan Walker, who not striking out anybody, putting men on base from walks, and it can't keep the ball in the park. So giving the Nationals over 3.5 runs. Wouldn't like this if it was at 4.5, but beauty of it all, it's at 3.5. So we're going to take the over on that.
Go ahead, Garion. Put up your bukes. Oh!
That is not this segment at all.
I know it's not,
we
but it
are
was
in a
a
similar
nice segue.
territory.
Yes.
I guess technically on opposite sides, but not really. I just also think the Mets are going to score a bunch of runs in this game. I think it's going to be a relatively high-scoring game in general. Yoanna Don is taking the mound for the Nationals, and there might not be a better pitcher to pick on in all of baseball in 2022. This guy has a 7, roughly, expected ERA so far this season. I think it's 6.86 to be precise. But he comes into this start leading all qualified pitchers in baseball in barrels per plate appearance and barrels per batted ball event. This guy gives up so much hard contact. And look, nowadays you need a lot of hard contact to actually give up a home run or 2, but he makes sure to get it done. So I'm going to take the Mets first 5 over 2.5 runs. They scored 3 runs in the first inning yesterday. Didn't score again, but that's all they need to do again today.
All right, Eric, what's your favorite bet from the early action today? 4 games starting at 1 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah, I'll go with the latest of the early games, which actually starts a couple hours later. I like the Twins at +115, home against the Astros. The 2 lineups have both been quite good this year. Twins with a 110 WRC+, Astros with a 108, so maybe slight edge to the Twins so far, although I would probably expect the Astros to close that gap by the end of the year. As long as Byron Buxton plays on back-to-back days after returning from that hip strain yesterday, I'd say I like this bet here. I think the Twins have a similar lineup. The pitchers, I think, look similar as well. Nothing against Luis Garcia. He's having a strong year. 3.45 ERA looks pretty well earned. Good underlying numbers across the board other than a slightly low ground ball rate. But Josh Winder on the other side is really starting this rookie season strong. He was the 92nd prospect in baseball per Fangraphs. He was 67th over on RotoWire per James Anderson's fantasy-specific prospect rankings. And he would have ranked higher if not for a shoulder issue that ended his previous season. We don't have to worry about that, I don't think, for just one game here. 161 ERA through his first 5 outings. Solid underlying numbers across the board. Walk rate under 5% with an above-average ground ball rate and an above-average strikeout rate. He's a well-rounded pitcher who's got 4 at least average pitchers and the potential for plus command. If this wasn't at home, maybe I'd say that the Twins should be plus 115, but I think with that little home field advantage bump, I think this should be closer to 50-50.
Steve, I look at your face and it screams player prop. So what's one that you're leaning towards in the later games?
That's so weird. That's the second time someone has said that to me today.
Yeah,
Nick
I know.
Castellanos going over 1.5 bases at plus 105. Nice little plus money there. But he's going against the lefty, Tyler Anderson. And if we know anything about Nick Castellanos, is that he hits lefties extremely well. Numbers so far this season back that up very well. 488 WOBA, 259 isolated power, and a 214 WRC plus. Now, you might go and look at Tyler Anderson's numbers and go, pretty good so far. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you have this little cupcake schedule that he's had so far this season. 3 of the 5 starts that he's made has been against the Cincinnati Reds, before they got red hot, by the way, no pun intended. The Detroit Tigers, going nowhere, and the Chicago Cubs, going nowhere. Now he actually has a really tough matchup tonight against the Phillies. So give me Castellanos over 1.5 bases, plus 105. Even if he doesn't get it against Anderson, his numbers against righties has also been absurd this season. He's just hitting the cover off the ball. So give me over 1.5 bases.
Steve, are the Reds good at baseball now? I think they have like 7 wins, but 4 of them come in the last 6 games.
Over the past week, the Reds lead Major League Baseball in runs scored by 10. So
Wow.
just put that into your pocket and take that information somewhere.
Also, death, taxes, and Kristen Yelich hitting for the cycle against the Reds. That's just all
No
that.
doubt.
That's all that guy does. Oh my God, Samir! You have
Samir,
to pay
get out of the
attention,
shot.
dude. You have to pay. Don't yell at me, Samir. Don't yell at
How
me.
stupid is Samir? I mean, what's this, his first day? Get out of the shot.
I'm actually really bummed because he shaved his mustache off today. So,
Well, he's off balance, clearly, because
Yeah.
he keeps going in the shot.
what's a player prop you're leaning towards tonight, Eric?
Yeah, we don't have too many of the strikeout props in yet, but one of the ones that is in I do like, and that's Zach Wheeler to get over 5.5 strikeouts. He started this year quite slowly, but I think we can blame that on the shoulder soreness that delayed him in camp. His velocity was back up to 96.2 miles per hour in his last start, up over a full tick from his average over his first 4. It was really his first 3 starts that were a disaster, 8.53 ERA, but since then he's thrown 13.2 shutout innings, allowing just 7 hits. He's hit at least 6 strikeouts in 29 of his 37 starts since the start of last year. That's 78% of his starts. And the Dodgers are a good lineup, and they don't strike out all that often. But for a guy who hits this mark over 3/4 of the time, I think he still has a good enough shot here that I like him at minus 115 to strike out at least 6 batters.
Gare Bear, player prop sticks out to you.
Yeah, like Eric said, done up a lot of these strikeout props. I'm going to go with the other guy in that game, Tyler Anderson's take over 4.5 strikeouts. Steve mentioned it has been a soft schedule for Anderson so far this season, but you look at his strikeout numbers in particular, or his in-depth contact numbers. He comes into this game with the 8th best chase rate of any pitchers thrown 20 innings so far this season. Also has a swinging strike rate of 13.4%. And the Phillies have the 3rd highest strikeout rate in baseball against left-handed pitching. And it's not like it's the guys populating the bottom of the lineup striking out either. They're big 5 bats. Harper, Real Muto, Schwarber, Hoskins, those guys have combined for a 31.5% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching so far this season. So I think Anderson can get there tonight.
All right, dudes. Run total, run line, or money line bet you like tonight, Eric?
I'm going to be weirdly a homer tonight and stick with my Phillies again. Normally, I think I'm a little bit biased against my own team and pretty pessimistic about things, which, the last decade or so has taught me to be. But I like them at plus 125 here at the Dodgers. I already talked about how much I like Zach Wheeler. I think it seems like he's past his early season struggles. Maybe there's something there with Tyler Anderson, but I lean more on the, let's see, a little bit more than just 5 outings here. He was really bland over the last few years. Last 2 years, 4.49 ERA with an 18.2% strikeout rate. just a 33.3% ground ball rate. All he's really shown is that he doesn't walk too many guys. I don't think that's going to be enough here. I'm really surprised, given the difference between these two pitchers, why the Phillies are all the way at plus 125. I think that's too friendly of an underdog there.
All right, Gary, what are you looking at?
I'm going to look at the total in the White Sox-Yankees game. I'm going to go under 8 runs here. The Yankees have actually played 60% of their games to the under so far this season, and that's due primarily to the strength of their pitching staff. Luis Gil has not been part of that. However, he pitched relatively effectively last season, had a 3.95 expected ERA. The White Sox have also struggled immensely with right-handed pitching so far this season. They have just a 273 WOBA. That is the 5th worst mark in baseball. So even if Gil can't make it deep into this game, you know, the Yankees bullpen of 99-mile-per-hour flamethrowers shows up, and they're doing pretty well this season. They have the lowest ERA, and they've given up only 0.38 home runs per 9. And then on the other side, you have Dylan Cease, who arguably has been the best pitcher in baseball this season. His 1.77 expected ERA is the best qualified mark in baseball. So I think this total is a couple runs too high, considering the caliber of pitchers we'll probably have in this game.
Steven, run line, or money line bet? Run total, run line, or money line bet? That's a lot of words.
Yeah, just real quick, somebody said Dylan C. Cy Young back in March. I was just saying.
It's suck when he loses to Kevin Gausman, but runner-up is nice.
Reds and Pirates, over 8 runs. I already mentioned earlier that the Reds are like one of the best offenses in all of baseball all of a sudden. Lead the league in runs scored over the past week by 10. 54 runs is 10 runs better than the Angels and Giants over that span. How is that possible? Nobody knows. But here's one thing I do know, is that the Reds, in a time where the over is a dying breed, the Reds have hit the over in 70% of their games. They are 21-9-1 on the over on the game total this season. And for the most part, it hasn't been because they've been this offensive juggernaut. It's because they've been the team that's allowed the most runs to their opponents by a long stretch. 6.5 runs allowed per game for the Reds. And who are they facing? The team who's in second, the Pirates, allowing an average of 5.4 runs per game. They might hit the over on accident in this one just because of how these two teams play. 8 runs, too low. Give me the over.
All right, let's get you guys out of here with this. Gary, and Dodgers, Yankees, both in action. They're the favorites to win the World Series right now. So plus 450, plus 650 here, respectively. Like a month ago, or a month into the season, rather, like how are you feeling about any of these team futures right now? Any at all?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go the opposite of Eric and attempt to reverse jinx my favorite team right now. The weirdest line to me in terms of the make the playoff odds is probably the Toronto Blue Jays. Right now they are still plus 500 to not miss the playoffs. And I'm not saying this is necessarily going to happen, but with the emergence of the Angels in the West, the Mariners, sleeping giant. I know they're a couple games under 500, Steve, but sleeping giant. The Yankees right now are running away with the American League East. The Twins are a lot better than people expected. Like, this isn't a layup anymore that 3 American League East teams are going to make the playoffs. And again, it's early. The Jays have played one of the hardest schedules in baseball to this point. There's a lot of reasons to think they're going to turn this around. However, just look at the comparable odds. A team like the White Sox, who is in an infinitely easier division, is only 2.5 games back of the division lead right now. They are plus 170 to miss the playoffs. Why are the Jays plus 500? Because people liked them in March? I just think this number's inflated right now, and as much as it pains me to say it, I think there's some good value betting it.
All right, Bukes, you got the Twins and Angels still plus money to win the division. I mean, the Angels off to a 21-11 start, lead the AL West, and there is talent now rising up to play alongside Trout, Ohtani, and Rendon.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that maybe the Angels are actually legit this season, but that's too bad. They're in the same division as the Mariners, so not going to happen. Gary kind of touched upon this a little bit. Eric's shaking his head, but Eric knows anything. He touched upon this a little bit here. The White Sox are still minus 120 to win the division, okay? While it's not all that enticing to take a big favorite to win the division, about a month ago, they were almost double that to win the division. And we have a couple teams here in this division that I think we can say are overperforming. The Guardians are one of those teams. The Twins have been okay, but I don't think they're going to be able to sustain this all season long. So for you to get the White Sox at minus 120 to win the division, a team who was over minus 200 when the season began to win this, you're getting a really nice discount here. That team is going to figure it out. Their advanced stats just show how much bad luck that they've been running into. Like their expected batting average and their actual batting average was miles apart. This team is going to start hitting. They have the pitching staff to do so. Take them at -120. They're going to win the division by the time the year's over.
Eric, which futures prices here jump out to you?
First, I got to mention to Steve how much I enjoyed
Yeah.
the Phillies Mariners series earlier this week.
Yeah.
But as far as the actual question here,
There's
I'm
no
going to take a look at one of the bets to win the title, take it all. And I like the Brewers at +1,200. I think the teams that are favorites, most of them seem fairly priced, but I don't think you're really getting a steal, especially because so much can happen in the playoffs. They are closer to a coin flip. One way to really increase your odds in the playoffs is to have fewer coin flips. And this year, the top 2 division winners get a bye. Right now, that isn't the Brewers, but with how many games they get to play against teams like the Reds, the Pirates, and the Cubs, those free wins, I think, give them a pretty good shot of passing either the Dodgers or the Mets. It looks like it'll probably be to be at least the second best division winner. Then they're one step closer to the World Series compared to whichever of those teams finishes third. I also think their rotation is going to be really scary in the playoffs now that Eric Lauer looks like he's a frontline arm. Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta, Eric Lauer might be the best top 4 in the league. Then you throw in Craig Counsell as a manager I really trust in the postseason. I think at +1,200, even though they aren't the most talented team, I think everything lines up for them to have better chances than those odds suggest.
Guys, you were all fantastic. Even Gary and Steve, you guys can tweet while you're doing the segment. You are in a Twitter fight right now with Jeff Ulrich, who wants you guys off the screen calling you nerds because he wants to talk some NASCAR, which we're going to do right after this break.
He doesn't even know NASCAR. That guy stinks.
All right, before we get to some early PGA Championship odds, we got to hit the track here. We got to hit the track with DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich and Jeff Ulrich. This is their weekly NASCAR segment. Last week, gentlemen, so Jeff, you earned 6 points. Pierce, you had -13 points. So a 19-point swing here for Ulrich. But Pierce, still a chunky lead, 412.
Could have been so much more. Could have been so much more.
Been really bad.
You have no idea how close I was to taking Justin Haley too, who was like third, and he scored like over 60 points. Anyways,
yeah,
live in the past.
I mean,
I still beat Pierce.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see. What I wasn't here last Friday. I don't know who were your picks for last week's race. Do you remember?
I'm Kyle Larson. He was in second place, and
Okay.
he was the first car to wreck, so that's not good.
Okay, no,
I took Eric Jones, who I just learned existed last week. So.
Yeah, but you know
He
what?
was running well too.
Yeah,
really good well.
They were both up there, and I thought I was in deep trouble with Larson there until.
All right.
Anyways.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Again, you made up 19 points, Jeff. That's all that matters. NASCAR AdventHealth 400. We're going to break down this one at Kansas Speedway. Pierce, I'll ask you this real quick. What's the track strategy here for DFS?
Well, I want to remind people that we're using a different racing package this season, so you can probably throw out the 2019 through 2021 Kansas stats. I mean, if you want to look at them, that's fine. I don't think they're really the greatest data points to look at. I would much rather lean on the Las Vegas race from earlier this season, maybe also the Dover race from earlier this season. Those would be the two tracks that I would look at statistically. And then also pit stats. That's really been one of the heavy indicators of performance. The guys that are finishing in the top 5 that are winning the races, they also have the fastest pit crews every single week.
All right, Jeff, give me either a long shot bet or value play in DFS for this race.
Yeah, for sure. And just to add to that, like it's obviously a 1.5 mile race. So I'm going to be using a little bit of the Las Vegas results from earlier in the season. There's, I believe, the last time we had a 1.5 mile track. So you look at a guy like Chris Bell, I really like. I think you can make him live for a long shot bet, but I like looking at Bell's top 5 here, plus 250, and I like pairing him with Tyler Reddick. Look, we're out here to make money. Let's develop a strategy. You bet both these guys at plus 200, plus 250. You spread the units evenly. One of them hits, you're in good shape. Tyler Reddick ran really well last week. He was 7th in Vegas. Chris Bell, top 10 in Vegas, has been top 10ing really, really consistently. Let's hit a top 5 here with one of these guys. And I like sprinkling Tyler Reddick in as a long shot play as well. This guy looks really ready to win, in my opinion. I like the fact he was strong in Vegas. I believe he was top 10 in Kansas and ran well here last season too. So Tyler Reddick, a good long shot bet for me, plus 1,600. I would just stay on this guy until he breaks through.
All right, where are you going here, Pierce?
There's tons of value in DFS. You've got the Front Row Motorsports cars who finished well last week. Now, they got pretty lucky, but really that's what you're always counting on with the value plays is you need a little bit of luck for these guys to sneak into the top 20. Ty Dillon's not a terrible play. Corey LaJoie is cheap again. And then Justin Haley, as Jeff mentioned earlier, he's still cheap. And it's not that he's just getting really solid finishes, which he is. He's got a top 15 in the last 4. But his car looks really good. He doesn't need that much luck. The other guys need luck to come through. But Haley, he's looking pretty good.
All right, here it is, guys. This is where you're going to either lose some points or gain some ground, Jeff. Best DFS play for Kansas Speedway.
Oh, boy. Made me go first. Hey, I'm going to go with Chris Bell at 8,400. Really like the track history he's got here, too. Believe he's won an Infinity race. He's got multiple top 10s. Again, just really been very consistent. I think at 8,400, he's going to pay off for us with like a big top 5 finish.
What about you, Pierce?
Ross Chastain, he's got one of the best pit crews. This is a wide track, so some of the stupid, crazy drivers can dive onto the apron on restarts and gain positions, and Ross Chastain is stupid, and he will try to do that. Also, he is prideful and stubborn, and he doesn't like to get passed. So Chastain makes a point of leading meaningless laps during the race. Well, those are meaningless laps for him, but they score points for us. So I'm going to go with Ross Chastain to lead some laps, get out front, take advantage of his pit crew.
And then for your slate-approved pick here, Pierce, we're going to go to DK Sportsbook. Give me your favorite bet for the AdventHealth 400.
I'll take Kyle Busch to win. Again, he has the best pit crew in the business. They're the fastest in and off the pit box. And if you look at top 10 pit times, he has 25. Only 3 drivers have 15 top 10 pit times. He has 25 of them. Pretty impressive. The next closest is 18th. He should have won the Las Vegas race. He was a top 5 driver at Dover. Everything is pointing in his direction.
Jeff, where are you going?
Very tempting to just pick Kyle Larson here, plus 700. Odds are a lot bigger, especially than they were at this point last year. But I'm going to say that, you should be mixing in a couple outrights here. Tyler Reddick, for sure, I would mix in. And I don't actually hate going with Pierce's pick either and Ross Chastain. So I'd probably rather pick a couple guys from the plus 1,000 or bigger range. I do think, again, just with this being a 1.5 mile track, I think a couple of these guys look pretty live just with their track history. So definitely like Tyler Reddick. And like I said, top 5 plus 200 there. That's also a bet.
All right, Pierce, skedaddle, my dude. We'll talk to you. Are you part of the schedule show tomorrow? You probably are, so we'll see you then. But Jeff, stay right there. We're bringing in Reed T. Fowler. We're going right to golf. We're going to play through the Byron Nelson right now because we need to talk some PGA Championship bets because the second major of the year is next week. And we talked about it on the slate last night, guys. Brooks Koepka withdrew yesterday. He's plus 1,600 for next week. Does this WD, Reed, are you more likely or less likely here to bet this guy? A little nervous after this?
No, not really. If you take a look at it's like the last, 10, 20 majors, you have pretty much a split down the middle of guys who haven't played the week before and guys who have played the week before. And, it's just a matter of how these guys prepare. We know that Brooks Koepka, for winning 4 majors, he knows how to prepare. So I'm not too worried. At this number, though, at plus 1,600, there's some guys right now, even before the AT&T Byron Nelson finishes, that are at some pretty nice numbers. So I'll probably stay off for now because you might see a drift a little bit when the week comes to the PGA next week.
All right, Jeff, across 13 official PGA Tour events this season, he has just 2 top 10 finishes and nearly as many missed cuts as made cuts.
Yeah, so my problem with Brooks Koepka isn't that he didn't play this week. I mean, I would have liked to see him play just because he's been really inconsistent. But the problem with Brooks Koepka is his number. Brooks Koepka was going off at plus 3,500 in the AT&T Byron Nelson. Now we're being asked to bet him at plus 1,600. I just can't get there. Patrick Cantlay, who just won the team event, and Jordan Spieth, who just won a singles event at the RBC Hilton Head, are both plus 2,000. It's really hard for me, even with Brooks's PGA Championship history, his major championship history, to get behind Brooks at this number. I think you'll see the odds shift. I think you'll see his odds inflate quite a bit as the PGA Championship week gets on. But right now, he's not a player you should be looking to in the futures. Let's see if his number approaches plus 3,000 again. Then we'll come back and talk about this player.
Okay, yeah, let's look a little bit more into the future here, Jeff. Is there a golfer that you believe you should jump on now, like their PGA Championship odds right now, lock in that value in case they play this week at the Byron Nelson? We know there's some big names in the field this week who will be playing next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, you could definitely look to a guy like Hideki Matsuyama, who started out well. He's at plus 3,500. If you're looking at the top players and maybe the top 20 kind of, his odds to me stand out the most. I mean, he's got shorter odds than Bryce. He's got shorter odds than Xander Schauffele. Like Hideki, I'm sorry, he's just a better player than Xander right now. I think he's a better major target. Obviously won the Masters, but he's been really competitive in a lot of the majors too. We know that iron game once it gets rolling. So Hideki is a player that if you're watching the leaderboard at the Byron Nelson right now, if he keeps this up for a couple more rounds, this number isn't going to be here come next Monday. So plus 3,500 for Hideki really sticks out. But I'll be dead honest. I think the player you should be jumping on right now is Patrick Cantlay. I mentioned it already. Plus 2,000 when you compare it to the guys in front of him, it does not make sense. Cantlay's been all over leaderboards. He's already got the win with the team event. He lost in a playoff. Just does not make sense that he's got longer odds than Brooks Koepka.
All right, what do you think, Reek? Could a good tournament this week from guys like Xander or Spieth kind of move them up the betting boards next week?
It could. And in those 10, right, in the 10 that have played before the majors, there's a pretty disparate of where they finish, but a handful of them have finished in the top 5 in the week previous. So, yeah, I mean, if DJ, one of these guys wins, absolutely. Or we talked about JT as well yesterday, that's someone that you might want to, hop onto. But, I'm with Jeff with Patrick Cantlay. He's one of my favorites, if not my favorite right now to get at plus 2,000. I don't think it goes down, right? Because he's still at that position. So if anything, it might increase. I doubt it, but that's one guy that you should absolutely circle. Everything is pointing for Patrick Cantlay to win this golf tournament next week. If all things considered, right, the trends play out. The 2 guys that I think that you should be focused on is Jordan Spieth. We talked about him quite a bit, that Jeff does not like him, but if he putts well today or this week, then that's something that you'll see a number decrease if you like Jordan Spieth. Again, trends point to him finishing the career Grand Slam at plus 2,000. But if it's not him, it's the other guys, right? Will Zalatoris, his number's going to go down if he plays well this week, right? Like that, Sam Burns is another player who's trending extremely well. His number will go down. I don't think you need to make a ton of bets right now because we've always seen the drift post Sunday. But those are a few players that you should be looking at.
Yeah, Spieth tees off 2 o'clock this afternoon. Xander's 1 over through 9. Sebastian Munoz on top, 7 under through 11.
Sebastian Munoz is like, when you're in Mario, like playing Super Mario, and you get the star, and then you get like a suit, and it's just like you're on the cheat code. That's what Sebastian. He's got 2 eagles and like 4 holes.
Crazy. Hey, look at DJ, man, 5 under through 9. All right, last question here. So like we've talked about all week, no matter what show we're doing together, guys, a really strong field at the Byron Nelson. Is the winner this weekend close to an automatic fade for next week, considering we haven't seen someone win back-to-back tournaments since like the beginning of 2021, and even when like Harris English did that, like one of them was a team event, Reed.
Yeah, I don't think you need to.
Okay.
Like, is it hard to win back-to-back? Of course, right? Like, of course it is. But again, this is the PGA Championship, especially too, is one that's given way to first-time major winners too, right? So like it's sort of a mixed bag. So I wouldn't automatically fade him, especially if like JT or Dustin Johnson wins. Like you're not gonna be like, oh no, I'm not gonna pick one of the best golfers in the world who's just coming off a win. So no, I won't automatically fade the winner.
All right, Jeff, what's your approach here?
Yeah, I think Scotty Scheffler has taught us the danger in fading a guy who we just think can't win 3 times in 5 starts or 3 times in 4 starts. So especially if it's an elite guy. Obviously, if it's like a DJ or a Justin Thomas, and the only problem with those guys winning is that their odds are going to get shorter. But because it's an elite field, like if you can get them at plus 1,000 or better, it still might be a great bet. So no, it really doesn't factor in. Again, it just becomes a value proposition. Are you going to start your betting card with the guy who's closer to plus 1,000 or plus 1,200 now and just fade the rest of the field and just go all in on that guy and think he's too hot to fade? Or are you just going to say, well, now his odds are too short, I got to go somewhere else?
Yeah, Scotty Scheffler plus 1,200 right now.
That really doesn't sound that bad, does it? I mean,
His favorite course.
Yeah, this week, right?
He's gonna win again.
I think every course is Scotty Scheffler's favorite course right now.
Yeah, Augusta National's probably one of his favorite ones.
Probably.
Guys, it was really fun talking to you. Reed, I love that PGA Championship shirt.
I like that.
I wish we would have worn matching shirts today.
Oh, it's your fault.
I wish I had one of those and someone had got me one.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, Jeff. Don't worry about
great.
it, dude. It'll probably get caught up at the border, you know?
Yes.
All right, so Reed, you're on the slate tonight with Kaufman at 5 o'clock, and then we're all back here tomorrow, NFL schedule release special edition of The Sweat. Tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern time. I'm stoked for that. I know you guys are as well, so we'll see everyone then.